Chris Evans stars in and also is an executive producer on the Apple TV Plus miniseries Defending Jacob as District Attorney Andy Barber, whose young teen son is accused of stabbing a classmate to death. But before we drop, let's talk, I mean, I have in your honor worn a t-shirt there. And I'm going to show it.
I mean,
murder is the same subject, so, you know.
Yeah, I guess having runs in the family, right? Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't wear this out very much because, you know, it would feel uncomfortable to stand in line at the grocery store. But I said, where else am I going to be able to wear it and be appropriate?
Yeah, it really makes quite a statement, doesn't it?
Yeah. But what was it about this series that made you say yes to the project? Was it the character? Was it the people behind it?
Well, initially I was drawn to the role. I liked the idea of someone who had a traumatic childhood and as a result developed methods of coping that are essentially building walls, you know. Andy just buries things down with no intention of examining them later in life. As a survival tactic more than anything else. And I think as he's aged, I think he considers that less problematic. And I think he just considers that status quo. And I think he's developed a belief system and an identity that is more connected to his present than his past. And he's a husband and he's a father and that's his life now. And then to all of a sudden have all of that exhumed in such a public fashion, I thought was a really interesting thing to explore, but more than anything else, I got to say, you know, it was Mark and Morton, because you could have a great role, you could have a great script, but without a creative team that you feel comfortable with and inspired to work with, it can be tricky. Acting's a very vulnerable thing, and you want to make sure you're in an environment every day that you're excited to kind of get in that sandbox and take risks.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in the area where this was filmed, right? I don't know if that was also, you know, a draw for you as well. But I talked to Michelle Dockery previously, and she said she had a good time being at Boston. I'm sure you took her to get clam chowder somewhere or something.
You know, unfortunately, I was working so much. I didn't have much downtime, but luckily, my home was very close to where we filmed. So on weekends, you know, you just kind of have everyone come back to your house and have a few drinks.
The thing about Marvel movies is that they take up a lot of time for these great actors, and, you know, a lot of them have been Oscar nominated and everything else. And so I appreciated seeing you in a different type of role. And, you know, you traded your patriotic costume for nice suits, so I was glad to see that, and a killer beard. So
yeah, right. So I always welcome when I get to grow the beard out.
All right. Well, both you and Jaden, you've already, well, you played grandkids of Christopher Plummer in Knives Out, and I just wonder if that helped, because there are uncomfortable moments. I mean, he's obviously a mature guy, you know, and he's been in other strange films that I've seen too. So he's probably very well, you know, engaged in, you know, the role of acting and puts it away and all that. But did it help play that it was him being your son?
I mean, the first day I met him on, well, technically we had done another film together that he told me about. I didn't know this. Years ago, I did a very small movie where apparently he played a younger version of me just in one quick scene.
Really?
Which I didn't know. It was news to me. But the first day of Knives Out where we actually met, I said, hey, I think you're going to be my son. And you know, so it was nice to kind of get to know one another on that set, knowing we had Defending Jacob in the future. But Jaden, really, it's, you know, it's a tight-knit family unit. A lot of our scenes are together. There isn't always the luxury of rehearsal, so you have to hope that everyone comes to the set with a certain air of professionalism and that they're able to kind of utilize the time we have effectively. And I really have to tip my hat to Jaden, because it never felt like two adults and one child. It felt like three adults. You know, Jaden has a wisdom and a poise to him well beyond his years. His understanding of not just his character, but the script itself was almost shocking. He's incredibly intelligent, a really thoughtful actor. So I really am in debt to him for making that feel effortless and comfortable in trying to develop that family dynamic.
Well, right now, as you well know, many productions, TV and movie, are shut down and delayed because theaters aren't really back in business. And I think it's going to take a while for a lot of people wanting to, yeah, on a good day, sometimes theaters aren't very clean. So. But defending Jacob couldn't have arrived at a better time to fill in gaps. So, thank goodness you were able to, finish it in time.
Yeah, that's the silver lining, I suppose.
But it's interesting because I think almost the family unit, the three of you, are almost in your own quarantine watching this because you can't mingle the way and think everything's, hunky-dory because people know your child could be a murderer,
Sure.
And, especially I have to say Michelle, I mean, she was amazing what she had to go through. I mean, your Andy, like you say, can compartmentalize what's going on, but she is not handling it well.
She's ill-equipped. Yeah, she's not. She has no tools to address the circumstance, and that certainly was the worry. When quarantine began and I knew our show was coming out, part of my thought process was, oh no, one of the struggles the family has to go with is this isolation, and now it's really going to pale in comparison to what the country is going through, what the world is going through. But then I thought, maybe it'll actually be relatable. Maybe now.
Well, it did for me because I loved the production design of the home.
Yeah.
And to have a kitchen with 2 sinks is such a luxury.
Everybody loved that kitchen. The whole cast, the whole crew was just saying, I want to take this whole thing with me.
But Michelle, she told me she likes some of the artwork so much in the home. She took some home and it's in their house. So I don't know what you stole, but.
I think I stole a couple of those suits. I don't always get to wear suits in the films.
That was a good choice. Yeah. But like you said, Andy Barber seems very confident in himself in the beginning and all that. When I began to question is what he did with the knife that he found.
Sure. Yeah.
And that made me go, is he really a good guy? I don't know, and from there on, because he so immediately got disposed of it, it just seemed that shouldn't have been his first instinct. He should have talked to his son, you know.
Well, no, please continue.
Oh, yeah. And also the other thing, I also talked to JK, which was great. And I told him at first I liked him more because it's J.K. Simmons. And I go, but then when I went on, not so much. But the fact that you held that secret against your child and your wife, it just made me go, if that was me, I'd leave now. So well, that's the problem. Andy has kind of built this entire life predicated on deception, and I think he, like we said, he's able to justify, compartmentalize, and rationalize in his own mind because he came from such trauma, because he knew what that trauma did to him and he didn't want to bleed on anybody. So it was justified as an act of nobility, an act of parental concern, when in actuality, without that type of honesty between at least you and your wife, that's what causes the rift between Andy and Lori, that Lori can't cope with becoming a part of those lies. Lori has no tools to process and bury some of these uncertainties, and as a result, to be all of a sudden branded the thing that you've tried to avoid your whole life. Now it's truly that's why the third act is so powerful for Michelle. I think it would have been a little bit easier if we had said with conviction Jacob did it or Jacob didn't do it. And it's a family having to deal with the tragedy of certain hard facts. That's one thing. To deal with the uncertainty is another. And I think Andy has the capacity to make a choice and say, nope, I'm not going to open that box ever again. We're going to lock it up in the door, and I'm going to keep on doing the thing that I've done, and subscribe to this belief system. And I just don't think Lori has, like you said, those tools to cope. Well, I did not read the book. So when I was doing some research, I realized it's a very different ending.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't open-ended in the book as in the way this is. And I mean, did that feel more set? I mean, I know that they gave Lori more to do than she gets in the book as well. So in order to justify all that, there had to be a different kind of ending to it. But
Sure.
do you think it does work better, at least in terms of what everyone you were working with was trying
Well,
to do?
I think it works in the sense that one of my favorite parts of viewing, the experiences after it's over of having a discussion, whether it's, with a friend or with myself, dissecting and analyzing, doing the sort of, post-mortem. And I think if things are wrapped up tightly and, it's neat, I think it's a little bit more clear what the right or wrong answer would be. And I think, even, as much as it highlights Lori's inability to cope with that uncertainty, to cope with a way of living and a knowledge that she's never really explored before, it also highlights Andy's ability to take what is a huge question mark, a huge uncertainty in your life that I think most people would unravel, when confronted with. Andy is able to, I think the most honest Andy comes or comes to being in the thing is, at one point he turns around and he actually asks Jacob, did you do it in the car? Did you do it? And Jacob says no. And I think that's the most truth Andy's allowed himself to feel. And Jacob says no. And I think Andy just says, okay, then that's it. Then that's the new North Star. And I'm just going to build my life off of that. Because again, he's had an entire lifetime of that exact behavior.
Now, in other interviews, you have mused a bit about whether there could be a second season.
Right.
And, HBO did it with Big Little Lies, but then they got Meryl Streep. So you have to get Meryl Streep or somebody.
Defending Meryl.
Right. But would you be up for another season?
Yeah, I would. It would, the conditions would have to be right. You want to make sure there has to be a story to tell. There has to be something worth exploring. You have to be aiming for more than what we already have achieved. So you have to make sure it doesn't feel like a cash grab or just aimless. And but as I said earlier, acting is such a tricky process. And without naming names, I've been on sets that it's been a little more of a struggle. And so whenever you come across an environment that is really conducive to my process specifically, it's understandable to want to revisit it.
But like I said, this came in just in the nick of time because it's a very engaging, experience to watch this. But it's disturbing too. But like you say, it makes you think. And I think Jaden did a great job of being this kind of cut off kid who can't express his feelings. And if you ever, well, you've been a adolescent boy. Yeah. I had to raise two of them, so they don't tell you much. Right. It
can be a handful.
Right. But do you have any projects that have been put on hold because of all this?
Well, there was Little Shop of Horrors that I think is, was already in the building stages before COVID began, but certainly now has gone to the back burner just because, like you said, I don't know if studios know what's going to happen with the future of, movie theaters.
Well, we get to see Hamilton for free, or almost free.
That's right. I keep seeing the commercials on TV. That's really exciting.
Right. So thank God for streaming, because without it, I mean, now I'm on, video on demand all the time,
Right.
So
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, well, thank you for your time, and
absolutely.
Thank you for making this series, and hopefully, you'll return to the Marvel Universe again soon.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.